Joining me now to discuss is someone involved in all this, Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan. Congressman, thanks so much for taking the time this morning.
Well, thanks for having me, Jim.
All right, so the president leaves for Europe tomorrow, G20, and then COP26, which deals with climate issues. He was hoping to have something in hand. Will Democrats send him to Europe empty-handed?
Well, I think the most important thing is we get this right. As you mentioned, there's a few new revenue streams we're looking at right now. What people back home are asking for is what is in the bill for them, how they're going to benefit from it, not necessarily what day we're going to pass it. I know it would be great to have done so the president can talk about this, and I still think there's a possibility. But the most important part is we get the provisions right, and we're down to just a few final issues, so I'm optimistic.
But some big ones, and by the way, we didn't set those deadlines. The Democratic leadership has set these repeated deadlines. Are the deadlines, is the latest deadline not going to happen?
After almost 9 years in Congress, I realized the only way Congress operates is when we have a deadline, it seems like. So I understand why people put dates out there to get people talking. But again, at the end of the day, having these huge transformational ideas, like not paying more than 7% of your income for child care, the child tax credit that lifts half the children out of poverty in this country, a tax cut for 40 million American families. I mean, those are the things that really matter to people back home and across the country, and those are the things that we want to get right.
Okay. To get it right, though, you got to work out disagreements within your own party. One of those disagreements is on this question, whether a framework agreement on the budget bill is enough to secure votes for the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure. The progressive chair of the Democrats, she says framework's not enough. Pelosi says it is. You're a leader in the Progressive Caucus as well. Is a framework enough for you?
There are dozens of us in the Progressive Caucus who've said all along we want to have both bills go through at the same time. Originally, we said we wanted it to pass through the Senate. I think if the president could give us assurances as he's working with senators that it will pass the Senate, we can do both bills at the same time in the House, and that's what dozens of us are committed to. But, sending to the president to a climate change conference with only the infrastructure bill when almost all the money around climate change is in the Build Back Better Act doesn't make sense. But having an announcement that we have an agreement on both would be something we could celebrate and send the president overseas to. So I'm hoping that we can still get that agreement, knowing that the Senate will pass both bills and we can pass both on the House floor.
You have said that the president can provide progressives, skeptical progressives, with assurances they need on the spending bill, basically put his seal of approval on a framework agreement. You say you would trust that. It does not seem that your colleagues would trust that. Are they, in effect, saying we don't believe the president's word if he were to make that commitment?
What we're saying, Jim, and we just had a meeting last night with about 30 of us, that when the president can give assurances he has a deal with the Senate is when we can vote on both of those bills out of the House together with the president's assurances that nothing will get messed up in the Senate. Because originally, remember, we said we wanted a Senate vote because there's a few senators we may not have as much trust as we do the president on. So nothing has changed on what I or Pramila or others in the Progressive Caucus have said. We want to send the president to Europe with a big win on climate. And the big win on climate is in the Build Back Better Act, not the infrastructure bill. So we have to do both together to give him that credibility that he really needs to be able to go there with.
You have said publicly that you're not throwing lines, red lines out there because you want to negotiate. You want to get a deal done.
Yes.
Many of your colleagues are very publicly setting red lines. And beyond the setting of red lines, there's some lack of clarity about what their actual positions are. Are you convinced that all of your Democratic colleagues are negotiating in good faith?
I can't speak for all my colleagues, but I do think it's the
That's not an endorsement.
Approach.
That's not an endorsement exactly of their negotiating tactics.
I'm saying I don't think it's a good idea to throw lines down there. I think we should all be working together to get something done. The problem that we have is we have to make sure that both those bills get out of the House with the assurances we need. And I'm worried about a few things. Like, I think it would be a big mistake for us not to have a Medicare expansion in the Build Back Better Act, and I'm going to keep working towards that. I'm not throwing any lines down, but to say that dental and vision and hearing aren't health care issues, that would be a big mistake.
Well, we'll look forward for the price tag for that expansion. Congressman Mark Pocan, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.